All 8 need to be terminated by end of day, non-negotiable. The words on my computer monitor burned into my retinas as I read the email from Paxson, our chief operating officer. My entire division, supposedly underperforming according to reports I'd never seen, was to be eliminated. Today, through the glass partition, I watched my team working diligently. Maeve was reviewing blueprint calculations for the green initiative that had won us 3 industry awards. Bryn and Lyle were deep in conversation about optimization strategies that had saved the company millions. Ellis typed furiously, likely finalizing the presentation that would revolutionize our supply platform. These people weren't underperforming, they were exceptional. The follow-up email arrived with 8 separation packets, each containing fabricated performance reviews, work never submitted, deadlines never missed, goals never established, but somehow unfulfilled. Someone had meticulously constructed a paper trail of incompetence that didn't exist. My phone buzzed. "Kaida, can you come to the executive suite?" It was Willa from HR, her voice artificially sweet. Upstairs, Paxson didn't even look up from his tablet when I entered. Willa sat beside him, a stack of papers between them. "We need to discuss timeline and messaging," Paxson said. "The separation must appear performance-based, not a layoff. Legal is concerned about optics." "These reports are fiction," I said, placing the packets on the table. "My team exceeded every target this quarter." Paxson finally looked at me, eyes narrowing. "Your loyalty should be to this company, not your subordinates. My loyalty is to the truth, and the truth is, these people have delivered exceptional results." Willa cleared her throat. "The decision isn't up for debate. We've prepared scripts for the termination meetings." She slid a folder toward me. I opened it to find 8 identical termination scripts, with only the names changed: cold, clinical, cruel. "And if I refuse?" Paxson's smile was thin. "Then you'll join them. Without the generous severance we're prepared to offer you for handling this." Discreetly. The subtext was clear: fire them or be fired. Back at my desk, I watched my team through the glass. Their lives were about to implode because of corporate politics I couldn't yet fully comprehend. At noon, Maeve knocked on my door. "Team lunch?" she asked, but her expression faltered when she saw my face. "What's wrong?" The others gathered behind her. 8 brilliant minds, 8 careers, built on integrity and diligence. "Close the door," I said. Their faces registered alarm as I explained the situation without revealing the termination order. "They're saying we failed to meet performance standards. All of us. They want changes by end of day." The color drained from Lyle's face. "But we just delivered the Bennett proposal 3 days early. And the quarterly numbers were the best in company history," Ellis added, voice breaking. I looked at their bewildered faces. "I need until 5 o'clock. Don't discuss this with anyone. Trust me." After they filed out, I opened my bottom drawer and removed a leather journal. Inside were notes I'd been taking for months: odd directives, questionable decisions, restructuring that made no sense. The truth crystallized as I reviewed the timeline. 3 weeks ago, my team had identified critical flaws in the expansion strategy Paxson had championed to the board. We'd prepared analysis showing the initiative would collapse under its own weight within 6 months. When I presented our findings, Paxson had dismissed them. The next day, our access to certain systems was restricted. Now this. My phone lit up with a text from Juniper, our biggest client's procurement director. "Heard rumors about restructuring. Is your team safe? Call me." I stared at the message. Then I made my decision. The next 4 hours were a blur of calls and messages, all sent from my personal phone. At 4:30, I gathered my team. "Grab your things. We're going to the quarterly all-hands meeting in the main conference center." "But we weren't invited," Bryn said. "We are now," I replied, checking my watch. "And we won't be alone." Before I continue, if you're enjoying this story, please tap the like button and subscribe to support the channel. Your comments mean everything. Tell me if you've ever faced workplace injustice like this. Now, back to what happened next. My name is Kaida Mercer. Until that morning, I was director of strategic operations at one of the largest companies in our industry. I'd built my division from 3 people to 8 over 5 years, hiring only the best. We were the problem solvers, the ones executives called when initiatives faltered. I grew up watching my mother struggle after being wrongfully terminated from her teaching position of 15 years. The experience taught me that corporate loyalty flows in one direction unless you create consequences for betrayal. When I was hired, the company was struggling with innovation. My background in systems design and organizational psychology made me valuable as they tried to modernize. I assembled my team carefully, diverse thinkers who challenged assumptions and delivered results. For years, we operated below executive radar, fixing broken processes and strengthening foundations. Our work wasn't flashy, but the numbers spoke for themselves. Efficiency up, costs down, client retention at record levels. Everything changed when Paxson arrived 18 months ago. The new COO came with bold promises about transformation and disruption. The board was entranced by his confidence and pedigree. His first act was creating an innovation council, staffed with his former colleagues. Their proposals were ambitious, but disconnected from operational realities. My team couldn't implement their ideas without significant modifications. Tensions simmered beneath professional courtesies. Paxson wanted yes people. I led critical thinkers. He prioritized optics. We focused on outcomes. The breaking point came when the Innovation Council unveiled their global expansion strategy. The plan involved simultaneous market entries across 3 continents with unproven systems and untested protocols. Run the numbers, I told my team. Every scenario, every variable. For 2 weeks, they analyzed data, built models, and tested hypotheses. The results were unequivocal. The strategy wouldn't work. Key assumptions were flawed, resource allocations insufficient, and timelines unrealistic. I compiled their findings into a comprehensive report with alternative approaches. Following protocol, I shared it with Paxson before the executive committee meeting. His response was immediate. "This stays between us," he said, dropping the report on his desk without reading it. "The strategy has board approval. Your job is implementation, not critique. With respect, these projections show potential losses exceeding 40 million. We have a responsibility." "Your responsibility is to your chain of command," he interrupted. "This conversation is over." I left his office troubled but determined. The next day, I presented our findings to the executive committee. Despite his warning, the CFO asked pointed questions. 2 VPs requested additional analysis. For a moment, I thought data would prevail over politics. Then Paxson spoke. "Kaida's team sometimes gets caught in analytical paralysis. Their models are theoretical. Our strategy is market-tested." That wasn't true, but he said it with such conviction that doubts crept into the room. The meeting ended with a consensus to proceed as planned. Over the following weeks, subtle retribution began. My team's meeting invitations disappeared. Our project requests faced unprecedented scrutiny. Resources we needed were suddenly unavailable. I documented everything while maintaining outward professionalism. When clients asked about changes they noticed in our responsiveness, I blamed system upgrades rather than internal obstruction. Then came that fateful morning and the termination order. What executives didn't realize was how deeply connected my team had become to our client partners. We weren't just vendors, we were trusted advisors who had saved them from costly mistakes. As we walked toward the conference center that afternoon, Ellis whispered, "What exactly is your plan?" I checked my watch again. Justice. The quarterly all-hands meeting was already underway when the side doors opened. Paxson was mid-presentation about the expansion strategy, gesturing toward optimistic projections that bore no resemblance to reality. He faltered when we entered, confusion crossing his face. His expression transformed to alarm when the main doors opened and 12 people in business attire walked in. The decision-makers from our 7 largest clients. The room fell silent as they took seats reserved for executives. I felt hundreds of eyes following me as I walked to the stage uninvited. "Since we're discussing the future," I said, plugging my laptop into the display system, "our client partners expressed interest in seeing all available data. In the spirit of transparency, I invited them to join us." The CFO half rose from his chair. "This isn't appropriate." "Actually," interrupted a woman in a charcoal suit, "we specifically requested this meeting. I'm Nydia, Chief Procurement Officer at Verdant Group. We represent over 60% of this company's revenue, and we have concerns about the viability of this strategy." Paxson's face reddened. "This is an internal company meeting. We can schedule appropriate." "We've seen both proposals," said another client, a silver-haired man from our oldest account. "We're here to discuss which one will determine our continued partnership." The board chairman stood up. "Perhaps we should move to the executive conference room to discuss." "No," said Nydia firmly. Transparency got us here. Transparency will resolve this. She nodded to me. Please proceed. I stood at the podium, adrenaline masking the tremor in my hands. The conference room had never felt so charged. Hundreds of employees watching, executives frozen in their seats, and our most valuable clients demanding answers. Let me be clear, I began, my voice steadier than I felt. My team identified critical flaws in the proposed expansion strategy. Our analysis shows it cannot succeed as designed. The projector displayed our data, not the sanitized version from Paxson's presentation, but the unvarnished truth. Market penetration projections that defied logic, resource allocations that couldn't possibly support the timeline, cost estimates that somehow ignored basic economic principles. Based on comprehensive modeling, this strategy will fail within 6 months and cost approximately $43 million, I continued, advancing to the next slide. However, we've developed an alternative approach that achieves the same objectives with significantly reduced risk. Maeve stepped forward, explaining the modified implementation plan. Lyle followed with revised financial projections. One by one, my team presented their expertise with confidence born from absolute competence. Paxson's face transformed from anger to something more dangerous. Calculation. He leaned toward the board chairman, whispering urgently. The chairman cleared his throat. While this is certainly informative, this meeting isn't the appropriate forum for debate. We appreciate our clients' concerns, but this isn't merely concern, interrupted Juniper, rising from her seat. As procurement director for our largest client, her words carried weight that made executives squirm. This is due diligence. My company commits over $30 million annually to your services. If this expansion proceeds as originally planned, we have serious doubts about resource allocation to our account. Murmurs spread through the room. Employees exchanged glances. This wasn't just office drama anymore. This was existential threat. Furthermore, Juniper continued, we've reviewed both strategies thoroughly. The alternative presented by Kaida's team aligns with our needs while supporting your growth objectives. Our continued partnership depends on its adoption. 6 other client representatives stood in succession, each echoing similar sentiments. The message couldn't have been clearer. Proceed with Paxson's plan and lose your biggest customers. The CFO whispered something to the board chairman, who nodded grimly. Perhaps a brief recess is in order, he announced. We'll reconvene in 15 minutes. As the room emptied, Willa from HR approached me, eyes wide. What have you done? She hissed. My job, I replied simply. My team gathered around me, a mixture of shock and admiration on their faces. None of them had known about the termination order, only that their performance had somehow been called into question. Were they really going to fire us? Ellis asked, the reality dawning. I nodded. By end of day, with Fabricated cause, Bryn's eyes widened. That's why you couldn't access the shared drive yesterday. They were altering our submission records. Are we going to lose our jobs anyway? Lyle asked, voicing everyone's fear. I don't know, I admitted. But if we do, it won't be in darkness, and it won't be with our professional reputations destroyed. The executive team didn't return after 15 minutes, or 30. At the 1-hour mark, an assistant appeared, requesting the clients and myself in the boardroom. My team exchanged nervous glances as I followed her. The boardroom atmosphere was glacial. 9 executives sat on one side, 7 clients on the other, with 3 empty chairs between them. I took the middle seat in this no man's land. The board chairman spoke first. This situation has clearly escalated beyond internal matters. Our clients have made their position known. Before we proceed, we need to understand exactly what transpired. Paxson leaned forward. What transpired is insubordination. Kaida was instructed to implement necessary personnel changes. Instead, she orchestrated this ambush. Personnel changes? Nydia asked sharply. You mean terminating the entire strategic operations team? The chairman shifted uncomfortably. We were addressing performance concerns. Fabricated concerns, I interjected, placing a folder on the table. These are the actual performance metrics for my team over the past 18 months, verified by system logs and client satisfaction surveys. Next to them are the altered evaluations created this week to justify immediate termination. The CFO opened the folder, frowning as he reviewed the documents. This began 3 weeks ago, I continued, immediately after we presented analysis showing the expansion strategy's fundamental flaws. Our access was restricted, our communications monitored, and finally, termination orders were issued this morning. That's an interesting narrative, Paxson said, his voice dangerously calm. But it doesn't change the chain of command or the expectations of loyalty to this company. Loyalty? Echoed the silver-haired client. We've worked with Kaida's team for years. Their loyalty to effective business practices saved us millions. That's why we're here. The room fell silent as the board chairman conferred quietly with the other executives. Finally, he addressed the clients. We value your partnerships immensely. Perhaps there's been a communication breakdown. If implementing the modified strategy would address your concerns. With the original team intact, Juniper interjected. Of course, the chairman conceded, though his expression suggested otherwise. When the meeting concluded, the messaging was clear. The expansion would proceed according to the modified plan, led by my team. The clients departed satisfied, and I returned to tell my team their jobs were safe. But something felt wrong. The capitulation had been too easy, the promises too smooth. That night, I couldn't sleep. The victory felt hollow, fragile. I replayed the day's events, searching for what I'd missed. At 2 a.m., a text message from an unknown number confirmed my fears. Watch your back. Board emergency session tomorrow. Paxson has a plan. The next morning, I arrived early to find my security badge deactivated. A security guard escorted me to HR, where Willa waited with a thin smile. The board has concerns about your actions yesterday, she said. You've been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. And my team? They'll report to interim leadership while we evaluate next steps. The subtext was clear. Divide and conquer. Isolate me, then dismantle everything. As security walked me out, I passed Maeve in the hallway. Her eyes widened at the escort, but I shook my head slightly. Not here, not now. Outside, I sat in my car, staring at the building that had been my professional home for 5 years. My phone buzzed with messages from my team. Before I could respond, another text from the unknown number. North parking garage, level 3, 10 minutes. Curiosity overrode caution. I drove to the specified location, parking near the stairwell. A few minutes later, a luxury sedan pulled up beside me. The window lowered to reveal the board chairman himself. Get in, he said. We need to talk. Heart pounding, I complied. He drove in silence until we reached a small cafe, several blocks away. Once seated with coffee, he spoke. What happened yesterday was unprecedented. So was fabricating reasons to fire an entire department, I countered. He nodded slowly. I'm not defending those actions. What concerns me is the larger picture. He leaned forward. Paxson didn't act alone. 3 board members supported the expansion strategy, despite knowing its flaws. This wasn't a simple case of one executive's ego. This was systemic. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm retiring next quarter. My legacy shouldn't be a failed strategy that bankrupts a 100-year-old company. He sipped his coffee. Tell me honestly, did you know the clients would threaten to walk? I suspected some would. I didn't orchestrate their response. No, but you created the conditions. He studied me. That was either brilliant strategy or reckless gambling. It was necessity. My team didn't deserve destruction for doing their jobs well. He nodded thoughtfully. Here's what happens next. Your administrative leave continues through the week. The board meets again Friday to determine next steps. Paxson is pushing for termination with cause, not just for you, but eventually your entire team. My stomach twisted. And you're telling me this because sometimes the company needs saving from itself. He stood to leave. What you do with this information is your choice. But if I were you, I'd be very thorough in my preparations for Friday's meeting. After he left, I sat immobile, mind racing. This wasn't over. It was barely beginning. My team's future still hung in the balance, and now I was on the outside with limited options. My phone buzzed with a message from Bryn. Emergency team meeting. My apartment, 7 p.m. Urgent. My phone buzzed with a message from Bryn. When I arrived that evening, I found all 8 team members, huddled in Bryn's living room, faces grim. They're splitting us up, Lyle said without preamble. Reassignments came through this afternoon. Different departments, different buildings, and they've revoked our access to the project files, Ellis added. Everything we've worked on for the past 3 months, gone. Maeve pushed a laptop toward me. But not everything. We've been making local copies for months. Standard practice after the Johnson project disappeared mysteriously last year. I scrolled through the files, Complete records of our work, unaltered and date-stamped. There's more, Bryn said. Juniper called me today. The clients are forming a consortium to address service continuity concerns. They've requested a joint meeting with the board on Friday, the same day as my hearing. So what's our next move? Asked Ellis. They've isolated you, and they're dismantling us. How do we fight this? 7 anxious faces turned to me, waiting for answers. The responsibility was crushing. These people had trusted me with their careers, and now everything was unraveling despite our apparent victory. I closed my eyes briefly, thinking of my mother all those years ago, broken by a system designed to crush dissent. When I opened them again, determination had replaced uncertainty. We need to understand what's really happening, I said. This isn't just about an expansion strategy or performance reviews anymore. Something bigger is at stake. Like what? Lyle asked. I don't know yet, but between now and Friday, we're going to find out. I took a deep breath, and then we're going to make sure the truth can't be buried again. As we talked into the night, piecing together fragments of information, patterns began emerging. Budget discrepancies, missing approvals, transactions that defied standard protocols. Look at this, Maeve said suddenly, pointing to her screen. The offshore vendor for the expansion. Trace the ownership structure. We gathered around as she followed the corporate trail through subsidiaries and holding companies until finally reaching the end. That can't be right, Ellis whispered, but it was. And suddenly, everything made horrible, perfect sense. I stood up, mind reeling with implications. We need to move quickly. We have less than 48 hours to compile everything before the board meeting. Will it be enough? Bryn asked quietly. I looked at each of them. Brilliant minds who deserved better than becoming collateral damage in corporate warfare. It has to be, I replied, because on Friday, only one side of this conflict will still have careers when the dust settles. None of us slept that night, working furiously to assemble the puzzle pieces into a cohesive picture. By dawn, we had our answer and our strategy. What we didn't have was certainty that it would work. Friday morning felt surreal. After 3 days of administrative leave, I drove back to the office for a meeting that would determine not just my fate, but my entire team's future. The parking garage was unusually full for 7:30 a.m. Board meetings rarely drew crowds. As security escorted me to the executive floor, I noticed the heightened activity. Staff members huddled in whispered conversations, glancing my way with mixed expressions of sympathy and curiosity. Quite the audience gathering, my escort commented as we entered the elevator. Board meetings aren't usually standing room only. Special circumstances, I replied, gripping my leather portfolio tighter. The elevator opened directly into the reception area of the boardroom suite. Willa from HR waited, her professional smile strained. The board is ready for you, she said. They've requested this be a closed session. I nodded, unsurprised. That won't work today. Her smile faltered. Excuse me? Before I could answer, the lobby doors opened. My entire team walked in, followed by representatives from our 7 major clients. Behind them came 3 people in suits I didn't recognize. What is this? Willa demanded, stepping between me and the boardroom doors. Witnesses, I answered simply, moving past her. Inside, 14 board members sat around the massive conference table. Paxson occupied the right hand of the chairman, his expression darkening when he saw who followed me in. This is a closed session, he snapped. Only Miss Mercer is authorized to attend. Nydia stepped forward. As joint signatory on contracts representing 63% of your annual revenue, I believe we have standing. And as counsel for these clients, added one of the unfamiliar suits, I'd advise against excluding them given the nature of today's discussion. The chairman's gaze swept over the assembled group, then settled on me. You've been busy during your administrative leave. I've been thorough, I corrected, placing my portfolio on the table. A tense silence followed before the chairman nodded curtly. Very well. Additional chairs, please. Once everyone was seated, he continued. We're here to address, Miss Mercer's conduct regarding confidential personnel matters and subsequent actions that potentially violated numerous company policies. Before you proceed, interrupted the third unfamiliar visitor, I should introduce myself. I'm Thea Ward, Senior Investigator with the Securities Exchange Commission. These proceedings may become relevant to an ongoing investigation. The blood drained from Paxson's face. What investigation? The chairman demanded. Theo smiled thinly. That's what we're here to establish. In the stunned silence that followed, I opened my portfolio and removed a stack of documents. 3 months ago, I began. My team was tasked with analyzing implementation requirements for the global expansion strategy. What we discovered went beyond operational concerns. I placed the first document on the table. The primary contractor for the expansion infrastructure is Highland Solutions, a company incorporated 6 months ago, with no prior projects or proven capabilities. New vendors aren't unusual for new initiatives, Paxson interjected, but his voice lacked conviction. Highland Solutions, I continued as if he hadn't spoken, is owned by Meridian Holdings, which, through a series of shell companies, is owned by 3 individuals. I slid forward 3 more documents, each showing ownership trails through subsidiaries and investment vehicles. Tracing these ownership structures required significant effort, I said. Fortunately, my team specializes in detailed analysis. The beneficial owners of the enterprise slated to receive $43 million in expansion contracts are Wesley Paxson, board member Gerald Turner, and board member Antonia Reyes. Gasps and murmurs filled the room. The named board members shifted uncomfortably while others leaned forward, examining the documents. This is absurd, Paxson sputtered. These are legitimate business interests disclosed in my conflict statement. Interesting you should mention that. I removed another document from my portfolio. This is your conflicts disclosure from October. Highland Solutions isn't listed. Neither is Meridian Holdings, or any of the 7 intermediary companies. The CFO, who had been silent until now, spoke up. These are serious allegations that require thorough investigation before. We've completed that investigation, Ellis interrupted, stepping forward to hand USB drives to each board member. These contain comprehensive documentation of the ownership structures, fund transfers establishing initial capitalization of Highland Solutions, and communications between the principals. How did you access these records? Demanded Turner, one of the implicated board members. We didn't hack anything, if that's your concern, Maeve replied coolly. Everything here was obtained through legal channels, public records, and analysis of the vendor onboarding documentation that your own people provided during standard due diligence. The real question, I continued, isn't how we found this information. It's why it wasn't disclosed. The expansion strategy wasn't just flawed operationally. It was designed to funnel company resources into private interests while guaranteeing its architects golden parachutes when it inevitably failed. The chairman's expression was thunderous as he turned to Paxson. Is this true? This is a mischaracterization, Paxson insisted. Highland was selected through proper channels. By a committee you appointed, Bryn interjected, whose members received consulting contracts with Meridian Holdings 2 weeks after approving the vendor selection. The SEC investigator leaned forward. I'd be very interested in seeing those consulting agreements. The next hour unfolded like a meticulously choreographed ballet of evidence and testimony. My team presented not just the self-dealing scheme, but the elaborate effort to discredit and remove anyone who might expose it. The performance evaluations were altered, Lyle explained, displaying before and after screenshots of database entries. System logs show these changes happened after hours using administrative credentials issued to Willa's terminal. Willa gasped. I was told it was a system update. Then there's the matter of our termination, I added. Eliminating an entire department for identifying conflicts of interest presents serious whistleblower protection issues. Not to mention contractual implications, added Juniper. Our service agreements specifically name Kaida's team as relationship managers. Terminating them would constitute material breach of contract. By noon, the picture was unmistakable. Paxson and 2 board members had orchestrated an elaborate scheme to profit from a doomed expansion, then tried eliminating anyone who identified the conflicts. The chairman called for a brief recess. When we reconvened 30 minutes later, 3 seats at the table were empty. Paxson, Turner, and Reyes had been asked to leave the building pending formal investigation. The board extends its profound apologies, the chairman began, looking genuinely shaken. We've notified corporate counsel and will cooperate fully with any SEC investigation. As for immediate actions, he turned to me. Miss Mercer, your administrative leave is terminated, effective immediately. The board requests you accept appointment as interim chief operations officer while we conduct a proper search. The offer stunned me, and my team will remain intact. with immediate promotions and appropriate compensation adjustments to reflect their extraordinary service to this company. After the formal meeting adjourned, the chairman approached me privately. "This wasn't what I expected when I suggested thoroughness," he admitted. "What did you expect? A negotiated settlement, not public execution." He shook his head. "You realize Paxson's career is over? Turner and Reyes will likely resign within days. They tried to destroy 8 careers to hide their corruption," I replied evenly. "Actions have consequences." He studied me for a long moment. "The board will ratify your appointment next week. Try not to overthrow the entire executive team before then." The aftermath unfolded rapidly. Paxson resigned that evening, citing personal reasons. Turner and Reyes followed over the weekend. The SEC investigation became formal the following Tuesday. Within a month, the modified expansion strategy launched successfully under my team's guidance. At our celebration dinner, Ellis raised a toast to Qaeda, who taught us that even in corporate America, justice sometimes prevails. "It wasn't justice," I corrected, looking around at the team that had become family. "It was truth. Documenting, preserving, and presenting the unvarnished truth when it mattered most." Maeve smiled, "And a healthy dose of courage." "That too," I conceded. "But remember, the victory wasn't destroying careers. It was protecting integrity, both ours and the company's." 6 months later, the board made my appointment permanent. The former chairman, now retired, sent a single-line email. The company needed saving. It found the right savior. I keep that message as a reminder that in the corporate battlefield, survival isn't about avoiding conflict. It's about choosing which principles are worth fighting for, then having the courage to stand your ground when the order comes to compromise them. What would you have done in my position? Would you have risked everything to protect your team and expose corruption? Or would you have followed orders and preserved your own position? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please take a moment to like and subscribe for more real workplace experiences. And remember, sometimes the most professional thing you can do is refuse to participate in unprofessional behavior, no matter who's giving the orders. The silence in the room was deafening as Kalina watched Bryce methodically empty the contents of her desk drawer into a plastic bin. His manicured hands moved with practiced efficiency, dropping her collection of pens, sticky notes, and the framed photo of her late mother, face down with a careless thud. Outside, rain pattered against the windows of what had once been her sanctuary, the innovation lab she'd built from nothing over 5 arduous years. "Is this really necessary?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. Bryce didn't look up, his sculpted features illuminated by the harsh overhead lighting. "Completely. I need this office cleared by noon." 2 days. That's all it had taken for the empire she'd built to come crashing down around her. Yesterday morning, 47 talented scientists and researchers, people she'd personally recruited and mentored, had been marched out by stone-faced security guards, clutching small boxes of personal belongings, their access cards deactivated midday without warning. Today was the physical dismantling. Through the glass wall of her office, Kalina watched as workers in coveralls systematically disassembled 5 years of breakthrough medical research. The prototype testing chamber, gone. The specialized equipment they'd modified for their unique needs, dismantled. And most devastating of all, the biomedical prototypes themselves, heart valves that could grow with pediatric patients, eliminating the need for repeated high-risk surgeries, were being fed into an industrial crusher in the loading bay. "You know children are waiting for these valves," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "We're months away from human trials." Bryce finally looked up, his blue eyes, so like his father's, entirely devoid of empathy. "Children? Please. This company isn't a charity, Kalina. It's a business. And your little passion project has been bleeding money for half a decade with nothing to show shareholders." "Nothing too," she began, but swallowed the rest. There was no point. This wasn't about facts or science or the children who would die waiting for the technology they'd nearly perfected. This was about power, about the old guard making way for the new, about Bryce Alderman finally getting to play with Daddy's company, now that Gerald had stepped aside. Bryce walked to the wall where her framed patents hung, 15 of them, each representing countless hours of innovation. With theatrical slowness, he lifted each one off its hook, stacking them in his arms before dropping them carelessly into a recycling bin. "Your legacy is over," he smirked, leaning against what had been her desk since she was 29 years old. "Father says we're going in a different direction. More consumer products, less long-term research, things that actually turn a profit." Kalina nodded once, her face carefully blank. 5 years of 12-hour days, countless weekends, the personal relationships she'd sacrificed, the milestones she'd missed, all reduced to garbage in a matter of hours. She picked up the small cardboard box holding her meager personal possessions. She didn't argue, didn't plead, didn't try to explain the lives their work would save. Instead, she walked out, passing the crusher that was pulverizing her life's work. One of the machine operators avoided her eyes, a tiny glass vial pressed against her palm, hidden in her closed fist as she pushed through the revolving doors into the rain-soaked afternoon. In her car, she finally allowed herself to look at what she'd instinctively grabbed, the catalyst compound, the miraculous enzyme they discovered that prevented tissue rejection, the breakthrough that made everything possible. Small enough to fit in her palm, yet powerful enough to change medicine forever. Without it, everything else was worthless. But what would she do now? Where could she go? And how could she possibly rebuild after such total destruction? If you're enjoying this wild corporate ride, go ahead and hit that like button. I'd love to hear in the comments if you've ever witnessed a workplace massacre like this one. And if you want to catch more stories about powerful people getting exactly what's coming to them, subscribe to the channel. Trust me, you'll want to stick around to see what Kalina does next. My name is Kalina Mercer. Until yesterday, I led the Pediatric Cardiac Innovation Lab at one of America's largest medical device companies. Today, I'm unemployed with nothing but a useless advanced degree and a tiny vial that could save thousands of children's lives. Let me rewind a bit. 6 years ago, I was working as a mid-level biomedical researcher when Gerald Alderman personally recruited me. Gerald was old school, brilliant, demanding, but fair. He'd built his company from a garage startup into a medical technology giant over 40 years. He saw something in me that others had missed. "I want someone hungry." He'd told me over dinner at the restaurant where I was waiting tables on weekends to pay off my student loans. "Someone who understands what it means to fight for every inch." The daughter of Eastern European immigrants who'd cleaned office buildings at night so I could attend good schools, I knew exactly what fighting for every inch meant. Gerald offered me the chance to build a division focused on pediatric cardiac solutions, a personal mission for me after losing my baby sister to a congenital heart defect when we were children. I assembled a team of the brightest minds I could find, not just the ones with prestigious credentials, but people with drive, creativity, and heart. People like Zeke, a coding prodigy who'd dropped out of high school but could program biomedical interfaces better than anyone I'd ever met. Or Nadia, a single mother who worked remotely from her daughter's hospital room, designing microfluidic systems between chemotherapy sessions. For 5 years, we worked tirelessly on the adaptive heart valve. Traditional valves are static. Children outgrow them, necessitating multiple high-risk surgeries. Ours would grow with the patient, responding to the body's natural development signals. The potential to save thousands of lives and spare families the emotional and financial devastation of repeated heart surgeries was enormous. Gerald understood this. He protected our division from quarterly profit pressures, giving us the runway we needed for true innovation. But 6 months ago, things changed. Gerald started missing meetings. When he did appear, he seemed distracted, tired. Rumors spread, health problems maybe. Then last week, the announcement, Gerald was retiring immediately. His son Bryce would take over as CEO. Bryce Alderman, 34 years old with an MBA and zero medical knowledge, had spent his career in hedge funds and private equity. To him, our division wasn't saving children's lives. It was a line item draining resources from more promising ventures. The morning after Gerald's retirement party, Bryce called me to his office, his father's old space, already transformed with sleek modern furniture and abstract art. "I've been reviewing the financials," he said, not bothering with pleasantries. "Your division has consumed over 30 million in resources with no commercial product. We're scheduled for human trials next month," I explained. "The FDA, fast-tracked." "Fast-tracked still means years before revenue," he interrupted, sliding a folder across the desk. "I've had consultants review your work. They estimate another 5 years minimum before profitability." Medical innovation takes time. Your father understood. My father became sentimental in his old age. I'm making decisions based on financial reality. I left that meeting with a knot in my stomach. The next morning, security guards appeared at our lab doors. By lunch, my entire team was gone. By the following afternoon, so was I. Which brings us to now, sitting in my tiny apartment on the east side of the city, staring at a vial containing a miracle no one else can replicate. The catalyst compound was my personal breakthrough, developed during countless solo nights and weekends when everyone else had gone home. It was the missing piece that solved the tissue rejection problem that had plagued similar devices for decades. Without it, the valves were just inert, medical-grade silicone. With it, they became living technology that could save countless young lives. And now I was the only person on Earth who knew how to make it. My phone buzzed. An unknown number. I hesitated before answering. Hello? Kalina? It's Milo, my former lab technician, his voice hushed and tense. I'm not supposed to be calling you. Are you okay? Did you find another position? No. Listen, Bryce is presenting to the board on Monday. He's claiming your work, the valve design, the trial protocols, everything, as his new strategy. He's telling investors he's streamlining the innovation process and promising commercial deployment within 18 months. My grip tightened around the phone. That's impossible. He doesn't even understand how the technology works. Exactly. He's bluffing his way through meetings, using our slides, our data. But Kalina, Milo paused, his voice dropping further. The Yoshida Group is flying in for Monday's demonstration. My heart nearly stopped. Yoshida Medical Technologies was the largest medical device distributor in Asia. A partnership with them would mean global reach for the valves and billions in potential funding. What demonstration? The prototypes were destroyed. I watched them get crushed. Bryce kept one set, Milo whispered. For show. But Kalina, without the catalyst, they're useless, I finished. Just empty shells. He doesn't know that. He thinks they're complete. He's planning to demonstrate tissue integration using Gerald's old slideshow, but when the Yoshida team asks for verification, the implications hit me like a physical blow. Without the catalyst compound, the demonstration would fail spectacularly. The partnership would collapse, and with it, any chance of our valves reaching the children who desperately needed them. Unless, Milo, I need to go. Be careful, and thank you. I hung up and stared at the vial in my palm. For the first time since walking out of the building, I felt something other than despair stirring in my chest. It was the beginning of a plan. The vial felt impossibly small in my hand, a tiny glass vessel containing 5 years of late nights, failed experiments, and finally, breakthrough. I placed it carefully in my kitchen cabinet, behind the salt and pepper shakers, and sat at my tiny kitchen table. Think, Kalina, think. Bryce was playing a dangerous game, one with children's lives as collateral. But he'd made a critical error. He didn't understand what he was destroying. Like many born into privilege, he saw only surface value, not the complex systems beneath. Sunday morning dawned gray and listless. I hadn't slept. Instead, I'd filled 3 notebooks with calculations, contingencies, and consequences. By sunrise, I knew what I had to do. I showered and dressed meticulously, the charcoal pantsuit I'd worn to my interview with Gerald all those years ago, a subtle armor for the battle ahead. My phone rang. Zeke, my head of software engineering. They're calling us back, he said without preamble. His voice held confusion and a hint of hope. Who is? Human Resources. I just got an email asking me to come in Monday morning. Same with Nadia and about 10 others from the team. My heart raced. What exactly did they say? Just that they're reassessing staffing needs and want to discuss potential opportunities. What's happening, Kalina? Are they realizing they made a mistake? I closed my eyes, seeing the trap instantly. Zeke, listen carefully. Bryce has the Yoshida presentation tomorrow. He needs people who can answer technical questions when he gets in over his head. So we'd be window dressing. He'll parade you in to impress Yoshida, then dispose of you again once the contract is signed. The line went quiet. Then, what should we do? Go to the meeting, I said firmly. All of you. Say nothing about speaking with me. Act grateful for the second chance. But Zeke, take detailed notes on everything Bryce says about the valves. After hanging up, I made another call. To Irene, Gerald's longtime executive assistant who'd survived countless regime changes over 30 years. I wondered when you'd call, she answered. voice warm despite the circumstances. Gerald would be heartbroken to see what's happening. Have you spoken to him? Irene sighed heavily. No one has. Bryce says he's taking time away from all business matters at some wellness retreat in Switzerland. No contact permitted. That didn't sound like Gerald. The man lived for his company, checked emails during his wife's funeral. Something wasn't right. Irene, I need a favor. Can you tell me who's attending tomorrow's board meeting? The usual suspects. The board, senior leadership, the Yoshida delegation, 5 people including Dr. Himari Yoshida herself, and, she hesitated, and Bryce added Clarissa Vega to the invite list last night. My stomach tightened. Clarissa had been my research partner during the earliest valve prototypes. Brilliant but ruthlessly ambitious, she'd left after I was promoted over her. Last I'd heard, she was leading cardiac research at our biggest competitor. He's hedging his bets, I murmured. If the demonstration fails, he'll offer Yoshida an alliance with Clarissa instead. Smart boy, Irene said dryly. Pity he's using his powers for evil. One more thing, I said. Does the executive washroom still have that supply closet with the hidden door to the boardroom? I could almost hear Irene smile through the phone. The one Gerald used to eavesdrop on board meetings during the hostile takeover attempt in '97? Certainly does. Key code is still his wife's birthday. After hanging up, I removed the vial from its hiding place and carefully packed it in a padded case. Whatever happened tomorrow would determine not just my future, but the futures of countless children waiting for our technology. The rest of Sunday passed in a blur of preparation. I contacted former team members, gathering intelligence and setting pieces in motion. By nightfall, I had a clearer picture of Bryce's vulnerable points and blind spots. At 5:30 Monday morning, my doorbell rang. I hadn't expected visitors. Cautiously, I checked through the peephole and felt my breath catch. Gerald Alderman stood on my doorstep. Not the commanding presence I remembered, but a diminished version. Thinner, grayer, his normally immaculate appearance slightly disheveled. Behind him idled a black town car with tinted windows. I opened the door. Gerald, may I come in? His voice was the same deep baritone, but quieter now, tinged with something I'd never heard from him before. Fear. I stepped aside, allowing him entry to my modest apartment. He glanced around, taking in the stacks of research journals, the whiteboard covered in chemical formulas, the half-eaten takeout containers. I apologize for the early hour, he said, remaining standing, though I gestured toward my small couch. I don't have much time. Switzerland not agreeing with you? I couldn't keep the edge from my voice. His eyes widened slightly. Is that what he's saying? I've been locked in my lake house since signing the papers. All communications monitored. Asset transfers frozen. The pieces clicked together. This wasn't a willing succession. Gerald's hands trembled slightly as he straightened his tie. My diagnosis came 6 months ago. Early onset Alzheimer's. Bryce found out, convinced the board I was already impaired. Threatened a public competency hearing if I didn't step down quietly. But your company is legally his now? Gerald finished. I signed everything over, trying to protect my legacy and spare my family the public spectacle. His face hardened. I didn't realize he would immediately dismantle everything that mattered. The pediatric valve program, Gerald nodded. 5 years of revolutionary work, destroyed in 48 hours. I taught him business, Kalina. I never taught him humanity. He looked directly into my eyes. He doesn't have the catalyst compound, does he? The directness of the question startled me. Why would you think that? Because I know you. When I recruited you, I recognized something in you. The same thing I had when I started. Preparation, foresight, the ability to protect what matters most. His gaze was steady despite his physical frailty. The Yoshida presentation is in 3 hours. Without the catalyst, it's just an elaborate puppet show. I remained silent, neither confirming nor denying. Gerald continued. Bryce is telling everyone you stole proprietary materials. He's prepared to have you arrested if you appear anywhere near the building. Interesting accusation from someone who fired me without cause and destroyed my entire department. Kalina, his voice softened. This isn't just about jobs or corporate politics anymore. Dr. Yoshida is bringing her grandson, Hiro, age 7, born with truncus arteriosus. Already had 2 valve replacements. She wants to see firsthand if our technology could help him. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. A real child, a real heart, not just statistics and projections anymore. What are you asking me to do, Gerald? I don't know, he admitted, suddenly looking every one of his 70 years. I escaped my handlers to warn you, nothing more. If Bryce fails today, the company stock will plummet. The valve program will never recover. Yoshida will partner with someone else. And if he succeeds through deception, children get false hope. Investors lose millions. And you, he trailed off, looking around at my small apartment, you lose everything you've worked for. A heavy silence fell between us. Through the window, I could see the first hints of dawn breaking over the city skyline, the same view I'd gazed at countless nights while working late, dreaming of the lives we'd save. There's a third option, I said finally. Gerald raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. I told him my plan. Not everything. Some details were better kept to myself, but enough. With each word, his posture straightened, shadows of his former self emerging through the weariness. When I finished, he nodded once. It's risky. Everything worthwhile is. You'd be burning bridges. Some bridges should burn. Gerald checked his watch and stood. My absence will be noticed soon. Whatever you decide, Kalina, know that I'm sorry. I built something I couldn't protect in the end. As he reached the door, I called after him. Gerald, how did you know where I live? A ghost of his old smile crossed his face. I approved your mortgage assistance loan 5 years ago. Some things a CEO doesn't delegate. After he left, I sat motionless, watching dawn break fully over the city. The headquarters building was visible from my window, 60 stories of glass and steel, where in just hours, Bryce Alderman would either cement his triumph or face catastrophic failure. I picked up my phone and made the call I'd been putting off. Clarissa, it's Kalina Mercer. I think we should talk before your meeting with Bryce and Yoshida today. Her laugh was exactly as I remembered, musical but with sharp edges. Well, the mighty have fallen. What could we possibly have to discuss? The catalyst compound. Silence stretched for several seconds. You're bluffing, she finally said, but uncertainty had crept into her voice. That compound was theoretical when I left. I completed it 9 months ago. Bryce doesn't have it. But you already suspected that, didn't you? It's why he called you in as backup. More silence. Then, what are you proposing? Meet me at Riverside Park, north entrance, 40 minutes. Come alone. And why would I do that? I took a deep breath. Because I'm offering you exclusive rights to the formula. But I have conditions. The clock was ticking. In less than 3 hours, the most important medical technology presentation in a decade would begin. By then, all my pieces needed to be in position. I gathered my things and headed for the door, the precious vial secure in my pocket. As I stepped outside, my phone buzzed with a text from Zeke. Meeting with Bryce in 30 minutes. Whole team called in. Security watching us closely. Something feels wrong. I texted back, stay calm, follow the plan, trust me. But as I walked toward the park to meet Clarissa, doubt crept in. Had I miscalculated? Was I risking too much? What if Bryce was smarter than I'd given him credit for? The morning air was cool against my face as I rehearsed what I would say to Clarissa. We'd been friends once, before ambition and rivalry drove us apart. Now, I needed her as either an ally or a convincing adversary. Either way, she was essential to what would happen next. My phone rang again. Unknown number. Hello? Dr. Mercer? A woman's voice, heavily accented. This is Himari Yoshida. I believe we have much to discuss before this morning's meeting. I froze mid-step on the path, commuters brushing past me in the early morning rush. Dr. Yoshida? How did you get your number? Her voice was crisp, authoritative. I have resources, Dr. Mercer, and when my grandson's life is potentially at stake, I use them. I moved to a quieter spot beneath a tree. I'm listening. I am not a woman who appreciates games, Dr. Mercer. I received a rather urgent email last night from a former employee of yours, someone named Nadia. She claims the technology being presented to me today is incomplete without your involvement. My heart raced. Nadia had gone off script. This wasn't part of the plan. That's a complicated situation, Dr. Yoshida. I deal in complicated situations daily. Her tone softened slightly. I'm bringing my grandson, Hiro, to this meeting. He's had 2 open-heart surgeries already. A third might kill him. I need to know, is your valve technology real? Can it help him? The directness of her question cut through my strategic thinking. This wasn't about corporate politics anymore. It was about a 7-year-old boy. Yes, I said simply. The technology is real, but it's not ready without the catalyst compound. And you have this compound? I hesitated. Yes. Interesting. The line went quiet for a moment. The young Mr. Alderman seems quite confident about today's presentation. Bryce is betting you won't know the difference between a working prototype and an empty shell. Another pause. I see. And what would you suggest I do with this information, Dr. Mercer? Attend the presentation. Ask questions, particularly about the tissue integration process. Watch his answers carefully. And what will you be doing during this presentation? That depends on how my next meeting goes. With Clarissa Vega? Dr. Yoshida asked, confirming my suspicion that she'd done her homework thoroughly. A formidable researcher. Your rival, I understand. We have history, I acknowledged. History complicates things, she sighed. My car is approaching your location now. Perhaps we should continue this conversation in person before you meet Dr. Vega. I looked up to see a sleek black sedan pulling to the curb nearby. The window lowered, revealing an elegant older woman with sharp eyes and silver hair pulled into a perfect chignon. Dr. Yoshida, please, she interrupted. I've flown halfway across the world for this technology. I can spare 10 minutes to speak with its creator. The car door opened invitingly. I glanced at my watch. 25 minutes until my meeting with Clarissa. Enough time for a brief conversation. I slid into the plush leather seat beside Himari Yoshida, noticing immediately how she assessed me with clinical precision. Her designer suit contrasted sharply with the medical monitoring device strapped to her wrist. Not for herself, I realized, but displaying a child's vital signs in real time. Hiro, she said, following my gaze. His heart shows signs of strain already this morning. Excitement about our trip, perhaps. She turned the display toward me. This is not abstract for me, Dr. Mercer. I studied the readout, my training automatically noting the subtle irregularities in the pattern. Mitral regurgitation? She nodded, impressed. You have a good eye. Yes, his artificial valve is already showing leakage. That's exactly what our technology prevents, I said quietly. The adaptive tissue integration means the valve grows and strengthens with the patient. So, I've read in your research papers. Very promising. Yet now I'm told the demonstration today may be, what is the phrase? Smoke and mirrors? The car moved smoothly through morning traffic as I considered my response. The valve design is genuine. The prototypes exist. But without the catalyst compound that prevents rejection, they're just elegant paperweights. And Bryce Alderman doesn't have this compound? No. Yet you do? I met her gaze directly. I developed it myself. Nights, weekends, while everyone else went home. It wasn't part of my official duties. It was my personal obsession. Something in her expression softened. I understand obsession, Dr. Mercer. I've devoted my life to medical technology advancement, but I must ask, what are your intentions? Will you allow this presentation to fail publicly? The question hung between us as the car slowed near the park entrance where Clarissa would be waiting. Children like Hiro deserve this technology, I said finally. But Bryce Alderman deserves nothing. I'm trying to find a path that serves one without rewarding the other. Dr. Yoshida studied me intently, then nodded once. I believe you, which is why I'm going to share something with you. She removed a tablet from her briefcase and pulled up what looked like legal documents. My team has been researching alternative partnerships, including this. She handed me the tablet. It was an acquisition proposal, Yoshida Medical Technologies, offering to purchase the pediatric heart valve division as a separate entity from the main company. This isn't possible, I said, scanning the document. The technology belongs to the parent company. Patents do, yes, but according to our legal team, the catalyst compound may not be covered under your employment agreement if developed outside official work hours without company resources. Her eyes twinkled slightly, especially if the developer kept meticulous personal logs documenting when and where the work was done. My mind raced. I did have those logs, detailed journals recording every independent experiment, dated and time-stamped. This is why I wanted to meet you, she continued. Today's presentation is merely a formality for me. I've already decided Yoshida will have this technology, either through partnership with the current leadership or through direct acquisition from the creator. She nodded toward the tablet. Those documents represent Plan B. The car stopped. Through the window, I could see Clarissa pacing by the park entrance, checking her watch impatiently. Your meeting awaits, Dr. Yoshida said. I should warn you, the Alderman Company attorneys contacted Dr. Vega last night with a very generous offer for her to recreate your work. This was an unexpected complication. Thank you for telling me. One last question, Dr. Mercer. What matters most to you in this situation? Revenge against young Mr. Alderman? Financial compensation? or seeing your technology help children like my grandson? Without hesitation, I answered, the children, always. She nodded, seemingly satisfied. Then we understand each other. I'll see you at the presentation. As I opened the car door, she added, oh, and Dr. Mercer? Whatever happens in that boardroom today, remember that sometimes the loudest statement is made through success, not destruction. I stepped out into the morning air, mind spinning with new possibilities. Clarissa spotted me and walked over, her stride purposeful and tense. You're late, she said by way of greeting, her eyes narrowing as she watched Dr. Yoshida's car pull away. Making friends in high places? Just a chance encounter, I lied smoothly. Thank you for coming, Clarissa. Her expression was guarded, professional. We'd once been close, roommates in graduate school, research partners in our early careers. Before competition and ambition drove a wedge between us. You mentioned the catalyst compound, she said, cutting to the chase. If this is some kind of bluff, it's not. I gestured toward a nearby bench. Once seated, I removed a small notebook from my bag and slid it toward her. Page 47, the basic molecular structure. Clarissa flipped to the page, her eyes widening slightly as she scanned the formula. This is elegant, simpler than I would have expected. The elegance took 2 years to achieve. She looked up from the notebook. And you're offering me rights to this? Why? What's your angle, Kalina? Because Bryce Alderman destroyed our work out of arrogance and greed. Because children like Hiro Yoshida need this technology. And because, despite our differences, you're a brilliant researcher who would develop it properly. Suspicion clouded her features. That's very altruistic, but I know you better. What do you want in return? Your testimony. Today, at the board meeting, I want you to publicly verify that what Bryce is presenting is incomplete without the catalyst compound. Clarissa laughed, though without humor. So, I torpedo my relationship with a potential major client to help you get revenge? That's a terrible offer. Is it? Bryce brought you in as his safety net when the demonstration fails. He's using you, Clarissa. Once Yoshida walks away disappointed, you'll be discarded just like my team was. She went quiet, considering this. Besides, I continued, I'm not asking you to lie. Just state the scientific truth, that without a proper catalyst, the valve is non-functional. And after I commit this career suicide, you'll give me the compound? No. I met her gaze steadily. I'll give you something better. Partnership. You, me, and Yoshida Medical, developing this technology together without Bryce or his company involved at all. Her eyes widened. That's not possible. The patents may not cover the catalyst. I gave her a brief overview of what Dr. Yoshida had shared. But this only works if the demonstration today fails publicly, and the board understands exactly why. Clarissa was silent for nearly a minute, her brilliant mind no doubt gaming out scenarios and consequences. Finally, she nodded slowly. If what you're saying is true about the legal status of the catalyst compound, and if Yoshida is genuinely interested in this arrangement, she drummed her fingers against the notebook. What exactly do you need me to say? I smiled for the first time in days. Just the truth, Clarissa, with your usual precision and attention to detail. I think, as we finalized our agreement, my phone buzzed with texts from multiple team members, all variations on the same message. Bryce was panicking. The demonstration materials weren't working as expected. He was shouting at lab technicians, demanding the missing ingredient. We should go, I said, standing. The presentation starts in 90 minutes, and I need to make one more stop first. Clarissa raised an eyebrow. You're cutting it close. Timing is everything, I replied, thinking of the tiny vial in my pocket and the intricate chain of events I'd set in motion. Sometimes you have to let a situation reach its breaking point before stepping in. As we walked toward the street to hail separate cabs, Clarissa asked the question I'd been expecting. The formula in your notebook, it's not complete, is it? I smiled. Consider it proof of concept. The full formula comes after your testimony. She shook her head, a reluctant smile playing at her lips. You always were 3 steps ahead, Kalina. It's why Gerald chose you instead of me. Today we're on the same side, I reminded her, and we both want the same thing, to see this technology help children who need it. We parted ways with a professional handshake that held echoes of our former friendship. As her taxi pulled away, I checked my watch. 78 minutes until the presentation, just enough time for the final piece of my plan. I dialed a number I hadn't used in months. Trevor? It's Kalina Mercer. Is the offer still open? Trevor Hayward, financial reporter for the Wall Street Journal, had been pursuing me for an exclusive on our heart valve technology for over a year. I'd always declined, following company policy on media relations. Kalina? This is unexpected, Trevor answered, surprise evident in his voice. Which offer are you referring to? The profile piece on the pediatric heart valve program. The profile piece on the pediatric heart valve program. I could practically hear him sitting up straighter. Absolutely. But I thought your company had tight restrictions on speaking to press? Circumstances have changed, I said, flagging down a taxi. How quickly can you get to the headquarters building downtown? For this story, I can be there in 30 minutes. Perfect. Meet me at the side entrance on Madison. I'll have a visitor badge waiting. I ended the call and directed the taxi driver to the headquarters building. As the city blurred past the windows, I mentally rehearsed each step of what was about to unfold. So many variables, so many moving pieces. If any single element failed, no, I couldn't think that way. Children like Hero were counting on this technology. My team members deserved vindication, and Bryce Alderman needed to learn that some things can't be destroyed in 48 hours, no matter how much power you think you have. My phone buzzed with a message from Zeke, yelling at everyone, says someone sabotaged the demo. What's happening? I typed back, everything is proceeding as planned. Be ready. 60 minutes until the presentation that would change everything. The headquarters building loomed before me, all glass and steel reaching toward the sky, once my second home, now foreign territory. Security guards eyed me suspiciously as I approached the side entrance where Trevor waited, notepad already in hand. Thank you for coming, I said, handing him the visitor badge I'd arranged through Irene. Trevor's eyes gleamed with journalistic hunger. This is quite the reversal, Dr. Mercer. Last time we spoke, you wouldn't even confirm what floor your lab was on. Things change, I replied, guiding him toward a service elevator. Today, you're getting exclusive access to what might be the biggest medical technology story of the year, which is a revolutionary heart valve for pediatric patients that could eliminate the need for multiple surgeries throughout childhood. I pressed the button for the executive floor, and the corporate sabotage attempting to prevent it from reaching children who need it. His eyebrows shot up. That's quite an accusation. Quite. It won't be an accusation after what you're about to witness. The elevator climbed smoothly toward the upper floors. Trevor scribbled notes, asking pointed questions about the technology, which I answered with careful precision, giving him enough scientific detail to establish credibility without revealing proprietary information. Wait, he said as we reached the executive floor. Won't security stop us? I smiled. Not if we use the executive washroom entrance. I led him down a quiet hallway, using the key code Irene had provided to access a supply closet that connected to the boardroom's private anteroom. Through a narrow ventilation panel, we could see the boardroom filling with attendees. Board members in expensive suits clustered near the refreshment table. The Yoshida delegation entered with formal Japanese courtesy, Dr. Yoshida at the center, flanked by her team. And behind her, a small boy in a pressed shirt and tie, his complexion slightly bluish despite his brave smile. Hero. Seeing him, a real child, not just an abstract beneficiary of our work, strengthened my resolve. This wasn't about corporate politics anymore. It wasn't even about revenge. It was about making sure that boy and thousands like him had a chance at normal lives. That's Bryce Alderman, Trevor whispered, pointing to where Bryce paced near the presentation screen, his usual confidence visibly shaken. He barked orders at my former team members, who stood awkwardly in a group by the door. Zeke caught my eye through the vent and gave an imperceptible nod. My team was in position. It's time, I whispered to Trevor. Stay here until the presentation begins. Then find a seat in the back. Record everything, but don't intervene. Where will you be? Making an entrance. I slipped out through the supply closet, took a deep breath, and headed toward the boardroom's main doors. 2 security guards stepped forward as I approached. Dr. Mercer, you're not authorized. I'm an invited guest, I said calmly, showing them the visitor badge. Check the updated list. One guard checked his tablet, eyebrows rising in surprise. You were added 20 minutes ago. By, he frowned at the screen. By Mr. Gerald Alderman? I smiled. That's right. Confused but unwilling to challenge the founder's authority, they stepped aside. I entered the boardroom just as the lights dimmed for Bryce's presentation. The sudden hush as I appeared was deeply satisfying. Bryce froze mid-sentence, his expression cycling rapidly from shock to rage. Security, he snapped, recovering. Remove Dr. Mercer immediately. Before the guards could respond, Dr. Yoshida rose from her seat. Mr. Alderman, I specifically requested Dr. Mercer's presence today. She is, after all, the creator of the technology we're here to discuss. Bryce's face flushed crimson. Dr. Yoshida, I assure you, the technology belongs to this company. Dr. Mercer is a former employee with no current authority, yet curiously essential to today's demonstration. Clarissa interjected smoothly from her seat near the board members. Isn't that right, Bryce? The board chairman leaned forward. What's going on, Bryce? You assured us this presentation was ready. Trapped? Bryce forced a smile. Everything is under control. Dr. Mercer's presence is unexpected but not unwelcome. Perhaps she'd like to observe from the back while we proceed. I took a seat beside Trevor, who had slipped in during the commotion. The room settled as Bryce launched into his presentation, outlining the pediatric heart valve's potential market impact and revenue projections. For 20 minutes, he spoke confidently about technology he barely understood, using my team's slides, my research data, my life's work. The board members nodded approvingly at the projected profits. The Yoshida team listened with professional interest. Only when he reached the practical demonstration did Bryce's composure begin to crack. He gestured to a lab technician who brought forward a sealed case containing the valve prototype. This revolutionary device, Bryce announced, lifting the valve for all to see, integrates seamlessly with the patient's growing heart tissue thanks to our proprietary biological interface. Dr. Yoshida raised her hand. May I ask a specific question about that interface, Mr. Alderman? Bryce nodded, a bead of sweat visible on his temple. The tissue integration, it requires a catalyst compound to prevent rejection, correct? Can you explain how that compound functions at the molecular level? The room went silent. Bryce glanced desperately toward his notes, then to Clarissa, who merely raised an eyebrow. The catalyst compound uses advanced biochemical processes, he stammered. Perhaps more specifically, Doctor. Yoshida pressed, could you address how it overcomes the T-cell response that typically leads to rejection? My grandson's immune system is particularly sensitive. Bryce's face paled. He had no idea how to answer. In the awkward silence, Clarissa rose from her seat. If I may, she said smoothly, as a cardiac research specialist, I've studied this technology extensively. The truth is, the valve Mr. Alderman is holding cannot function without a specific enzyme compound, and that compound is not present in today's demonstration. Murmurs rippled through the board members. The chairman frowned deeply. Bryce, is this true? Before he could respond, I stood. The catalyst compound exists, I said clearly. I developed it myself, working independently on nights and weekends. The compound prevents tissue rejection through a novel approach to immune response modulation. I walked to the front of the room, aware of all eyes following me. What Mr. Alderman doesn't understand is that the valve is merely the delivery system. Without the catalyst, I removed the vial from my pocket, holding it up to the light where the clear liquid caught the room's illumination. It's just an empty vessel. This is absurd, Bryce sputtered. That's company property. You stole it from the lab. Interesting accusation, I replied calmly. Considering you personally destroyed all lab samples 2 days ago, I have 17 witnesses who watched you feed our prototypes into an industrial crusher. The board chairman turned to Bryce, aghast. You destroyed the prototypes? After 5 years of research investment? It was strategic streamlining, Bryce insisted, his voice rising. The division was bleeding money with nothing to show for it. From the back of the room, Zeke spoke up. Nothing except a revolutionary technology that would save thousands of children from multiple heart surgeries. Nadia joined in. Nothing except a solution to the leading cause of pediatric cardiac mortality. One by one, my team members added their voices, each highlighting an aspect of the technology's life-saving potential. The board members exchanged concerned glances. The Yoshida delegation watched with rapt attention. In the growing chaos, Dr. Yoshida stood and crossed to where Hiro sat. She placed a gentle hand on his shoulder before addressing the room. Gentlemen, ladies, while this corporate drama is fascinating, I'm here for one reason only. She gestured to Hiro. My grandson has had 2 heart surgeries already. His prognosis without new technology is poor. I came today prepared to invest $8 billion in a partnership that would bring this valve to children worldwide. The room went utterly silent. However, she continued, I cannot in good conscience invest in a company where promising medical innovations are destroyed for short-term financial appearances. She turned to face me. Dr. Mercer, would you be willing to demonstrate how your catalyst compound interacts with the valve? Bryce stepped between us. This is outrageous. The compound, if it exists at all, belongs to this company under Dr. Mercer's employment contract. The board chairman raised a hand. Actually, Bryce, we should clarify that point. He nodded to a woman I recognized as the company's chief legal counsel. Miss Chen, your assessment, the lawyer cleared her throat. Based on initial review, if Dr. Mercer developed this compound independently, using her own time and resources outside of assigned projects, there may be a question of ownership. There's no question, Bryce shouted, losing composure entirely. Everything she did belongs to us. Not according to my personal research logs, I countered, nodding to Trevor, who produced copies of my journals from his briefcase, the same journals I'd transferred to him outside the building. Every experiment dated, timed, and verified as conducted outside company hours using my personal equipment. Bryce lunged for the journals, but the board chairman intercepted him. That's quite enough, Bryce. In the tense silence that followed, little Hero spoke up, his voice small but clear. Can I see how it works? The heart thing? His simple question cut through the corporate tension. Dr. Yoshida looked to me inquiringly. I crossed to the demonstration table where the valve prototype sat. I'd be honored to show you, Hero. Under the room's collective gaze, I carefully applied 3 drops from my vial to the valve's tissue interface. The reaction was subtle but unmistakable. The biomaterial slowly shifted, becoming more translucent, more alive. This is what makes it special, I explained, kneeling to Hero's eye level as he approached. The valve doesn't just sit in your heart like other artificial valves. It becomes part of your heart, growing as you grow. His eyes widened with wonder. So, I wouldn't need more surgeries? That's the goal, I said gently. Dr. Yoshida placed her hand on my shoulder. I've seen enough. She turned to address the board. My offer stands $8 billion, but not under current management, and not without Dr. Mercer leading the project. The board chairman looked from Bryce's furious face to mine, then to the Yoshida delegation and the $8 billion they represented. Perhaps, he said carefully, we should take a brief recess to discuss new leadership arrangements. 45 minutes later, the board voted unanimously to remove Bryce from his position, pending a full investigation into his destruction of company assets. Gerald Alderman was reinstated as interim CEO until a permanent replacement could be found, and I was appointed Executive Director of Pediatric Cardiac Innovation with full autonomy and resources. As the meeting adjourned, Bryce stormed toward the exit, pausing only to hiss in my ear. You think you've won, but you have no idea what you've started. I watched him leave, feeling neither triumph nor satisfaction. Only relief that the technology would move forward. Dr. Yoshida approached with Hero by her side. When can we begin the clinical trials? She asked. I'll need to rebuild my team first, I replied, glancing toward my former colleagues who were already gathering around us, energized by the turn of events. But I'd estimate within 6 weeks. Excellent. She extended her hand to a partnership that will change countless lives. As we shook hands, Hero looked up at me. Thank you for not giving up, he said simply. Those words, more than the vindication, more than the professional victory, made everything worthwhile. Gerald found me later as I was briefing my reinstated team in what would again be our laboratory space. He looked tired but relieved. You did well, he said quietly, though perhaps with more flair than I would have chosen. I smiled. Different generations, different methods. Indeed. He glanced around at the team already setting up workstations, reestablishing the heart of innovation he'd built his company around. I should have protected this better. We protect it now by making it succeed, I replied. The first trial valves will be ready within 2 months. Gerald nodded, a hint of his old determination returning to his eyes. I'll hold you to that. He turned to leave, then paused. By the way, that reporter, Trevor, has some very interesting questions about corporate sabotage and medical technology suppression. Care to explain? Insurance policy, I said with a slight shrug. In case today went differently. I'm also body, he chuckled softly. Like I said, different methods. With a final nod, he left me to rebuild what his son had tried to destroy. That evening, as I stood in our restored lab watching the sunset through the windows, Zeke joined me with 2 cups of coffee. "Not bad for someone who was unemployed this morning," he said, handing me a steaming mug. "The team's wondering, did you plan all this from the beginning? Having the compound, getting Yoshida on your side, the whole boardroom showdown?" I sipped my coffee, considering. Not all of it. Some pieces fell into place at the last minute, but I knew what mattered most: the technology and the children it could help. "And getting Bryce kicked to the curb," Zeke added with a grin. "That was a bonus." I gazed at the vial of catalyst compound, now secured in our lab's specialized storage. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying your enemy. It's building something so important they become irrelevant. 2 months later, Hiro Yoshida became the first recipient of our adaptive heart valve. His successful procedure made medical headlines worldwide. And somewhere across the city, Bryce Alderman read those same headlines, understanding too late what he had tried to destroy in 48 hours. Some legacies can't be erased so easily. If this corporate revenge story got your blood pumping, hit that like button. Have you ever had a boss or colleague try to destroy your work? Share your experience in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories about professionals who refuse to let their work be undermined. Remember, sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, it's getting ahead and making your work too valuable to ignore. Thanks for listening all the way through.